So, Dimitri? OK? Allô, Jean-François? Vous m'entendez?
Hello?
Hello, Jean-François? Mon nom est Valentin Makarov de Saint-Pétersbourg. Alors, je vous salue de Saint-Pétersbourg où je vous souhaite de présenter votre présentation dans cette audition qui est vraiment plein de gens innovateurs. Alors, now I will speak English. Here is a good auditory composed of different innovative people from universities and also from businesses. And we are very happy to see you here. And we attended you 6 months ago in St. Petersburg. Still political problems prohibited your participation in our real-time conversation. Now it's more easy way to make communication via internet. So you are very welcome. It's auditory is ready for accepting new ideas and technological brokerage, and very happy to have you here today with us. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I just want to do a quick sound test and visual test. Can you hear and see me properly?
Very good, very good.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I can't join you in person at the moment. Hopefully in the next couple of months we will solve this situation. Nevertheless, it's always a pleasure for me to be close to Russian talent. I have lived in Russia myself, and I have supported Russian companies in the past, explore business opportunities with foreign companies, and I've helped several foreign companies enter Russia. Back then, I was leader of our automotive segment in Moscow for EY, and in 2005, I have joined a global team with headquarters here in Detroit, where I have to be from time to time. In recent years, I have increasingly focused my attention on everything that supports the automotive and transportation industry from a non-product standpoint. That means my role is to help vehicle manufacturers and other stakeholders in the value chain understand what this transition from a purely product standpoint, that is, we sell a car or a bus, towards a service, that is, we sell a mobility solution. And my role is to accompany various enterprises through this activity, which is very difficult for most of them because they're not designed to do that. We have prepared a couple of slides to talk about that a little bit more precisely. Do you have access to the slides right now? Can you see the slides?
Yes, okay.
Okay, good. And in interest of time, because I have commitments here at 5 p.m. your time, I suggest that we go directly to slide 7, called "What is Mobility?" And my colleagues in the room, should there be need for this, will cover the other slides about my company, which I suspect many of you know at least from the brand. We are, as you know, a large company, and we can focus on different segments of the industry, and thereby create teams that are exclusively devoted to very specific dimensions of the business. So, on slide 7, what is mobility? I'm trying to show you there the ecosystem in which I am active with my colleagues. So you can see that there's an urban, a regional, and a global dimension to the discussions we are having with the vehicle manufacturers and other stakeholders. And there's a private, a commercial, and a public dimension as well. And in each of those, there is a mobility solution that is trying to be deployed. And we are trying to identify what are these mobility solutions and how do you best implement them. So I could give you an example of a project on which I am working right now in California. So that would be for urban and public. We are helping a local school connect the school buses. Well, first we convert the buses. There are diesel buses, school buses. We convert them into electric buses, and then we equip them with a vehicle-to-grid capacity. And we buy energy. Well, we fill the battery at night, and we discharge it, of course, while we do the route to bring the kids to school. And while the bus sits idle, we sell energy back into the grid at 40 cents to kilowatt hour, which is almost 4 times more than what was paid during the night. And so this is a pilot project. The buses are being converted right now, and we're going to connect them with the system very soon and literally transform the bus into, you could say, a mobile phone. That is, the asset doesn't need to be financed the same way as a pure product. If you plug in a service into the asset, you can finance it in a very different way. And so the energy consumption also has a strategic dimension, which means if you plug several buses together, you get to an interesting level of kilowatt hour, which could be sufficient to help the school be used as a shelter in case of catastrophe, or in case of any specific need that the city might have. And now we're discussing with the finance world what's the risk level, what's the beta behind this, in order to create a new way to finance this business. So that's, I think, an example that allows you to see how we are bringing the product into a service business while considering the energy dimension, which I think is essential. So to us, this is an example of mobility. Also with cities, we are increasingly discussing how the buses can serve the cities in a better way. For instance, implementing telematics solutions into the vehicles in order to follow the quality of and condition of the road, which has a positive impact on how much salt you put on the roads in order to make sure that they remain safe. Again, a product becoming a tool that serves the business. But it's very difficult for vehicle manufacturers to do that because they are designed to print vehicles, right? It's all about cost reduction, supplier management, and platform building, which allows to, at the product level, be as profitable as possible. But interestingly, we see that we can witness a shift in the mentalities of most manufacturers at the moment who claim that, indeed, they're no longer selling a vehicle. They need to sell something else. Otherwise, someone else will do that. Maybe I take this occasion to tell you that a big dimension of this transition is around the data management. Of course, the service business needs to be focused on how do I serve the customer, how do I understand my ecosystem, and this can be done through data capture and analysis. This is causing a big hurdle for vehicle manufacturers who, in fact, don't really know how to handle data. They are not designed to handle data. They're not even designed to have a client. A car manufacturer does not have a client. It has dealerships who have clients. And so the entire information management is of huge importance. And I suspect that your university and the ecosystem in which you are active is an area where you can add value, namely in the secured transfer of information, in the accelerated transfer of information, because we know that the ecosystem, the technological ecosystem, is not ready to absorb at the byte level the quantity of information that a vehicle can display. So progress needs to be made, and vehicle manufacturers are slightly uncomfortable with this issue because this is already leaning out of their comfort zone significantly. So as a next portion of my time with you this morning, I'd like to share with you a little bit what we do in more detail around mobility innovation, and then go into a typical example of what is a transaction support that we perform from the beginning to the end of the M&A process. So I'm on slide 8 briefly. You can look at this in more detail later on, but I wanted you to get a picture of what is it that we do. What are the segments in which we are active when it comes to working with the vehicle manufacturers or the city administrations or the telecom players or the telematics service providers, the TSPs. So at the level 1 and 2, we are present at a strategic level. That is, we help respond to questions such as, what do you want to do? What are your goals? Do you have a telematics strategy, you vehicle manufacturer? How big do you think the market size is for your idea? Do you think that your customer will respond to the market demand the way you believe there is a market demand? Do you need help in validating the technology that you are using? Should you be focusing on another technology that might be disruptively more attractive in order to slow down the follow up attitude of your competition? So these are the 1 and 2 dimensions, vision and roadmap, customer and market diligence. And then once a technology or a business strategy has been identified, we help with the whole business planning and modeling, right? So if you have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 customers, what does that mean for you from a financial standpoint? And how will you be, with your marketing strategy, present in the market? And so on, right? So you can see plan execution as well as program enhancement are the next phases. So we really go from strategy to the full execution, and at the 5th level, we help with iterative improvements. So we try to be present across the whole value chain, and of course I work with colleagues on those various segments. Personally, I'm more active on the 1 and 2 sides, the 2 segments. That is the strategy level, but I work with transaction people or any other colleagues to go get the additional value that we need for the project. And on slide 9, that's a typical phase oriented transaction approach that we take to take a company. It can be a startup or it can be a large enterprise through a sales process or through the process of finding the right joint venture partner, which is something I've done quite often in recent years. Also, I've worked on joint venture projects involving US or American or European, Western European players with Russian players. So I will not go through all the details here, but I wanted you to get a feel for, what are the processes that can lead to closing a deal, right? Sometimes it's not very transparent. The next slide also is quite detailed around, and it gives you from a time perspective, usually a transaction will last how many months. This is very often neglected by the various constituents, right? This is a long process, and it has to be iterative as well, in the sense that very often with month 1 and 2, you're down back to the beginning because you realize you have not identified the right partners. I'm going to stop here and ask if there are any questions, or if I'm talking about the right topic. I'm more than happy to cover other dimensions as well. I want to be sure that that this is value added for everyone joining the event. So back to you, please, with just a quick feedback on how I'm doing on time and content.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Jean-François. Спасибо. Коллеги, сейчас вопросы Жан-Франсуа. Alors, I know you are limited by, you need to leave within 10 minutes from here. But by the way, your colleagues from Ernst Young are also here in the hall, so you may answer questions if there are any. But still, вопросы, Жан-Франсуа, пожалуйста, коллеги. Мне кажется, такие два выступления сразу немножко подавили чуть-чуть. My question to you, you know, we have had two presentations. In both, the main principal idea was customers. So when you are making this technology and you're making transfer and brokerage, every time you need first to think about customers. Do you think Russian industries are ready to accept this technology, or they still think about product sales technology? Do you know about Russian industry whatsoever? Are you ready to accept participation of Russian enterprises in chains of production or chains of sales in the West?
So the way I see Russia in this ecosystem is more, is not necessarily from a consumption of the services, but rather from the presence from a technology side. When I was working in Russia, I was told by Daimler that, and that was in let's say early 2000, Daimler said back then that the Mercedes C-Class was 1% Russian. It meant that from a value standpoint, 1% of the value was created by Russian knowledge, Russian technology. And I think this is what I have in mind when I talk to you and when I maintain relationships with Russian colleagues. I think there's a lot of very advanced talent in Russia that could contribute more to the development of additional technologies and solutions that we need in order to fully move towards this new era. So that's my angle. Now, you bring another angle, which is, yeah, how about we consume those mobility services? In fact, the reason why I was very interested to work with St. Petersburg and visit you earlier this year was precisely around the fact that because you have a very centralized decision-making processes at the city levels, I think that Russian cities can be in a position to accelerate the implementation of pilot projects that are more difficult to achieve in other regions because the decision layers are more complex. So you go and approach a city administration in a Western city and they say, oh, this is impossible to put any telematics device on any public vehicles. We cannot accept that without getting several approvals. And I would suspect that if we would have a strong collaboration between the university in St. Petersburg and some city administration really willing to test things out, we could very quickly put a telematics device on all taxis, all police vehicles, all public domain vehicles. And then with that, we could get into some traffic management testing that could be of high value. Now, there's another dimension to that is the Russian customer. Is the Russian customer ready for advanced mobility solutions? What is an advanced mobility solution? It's the integration of vehicle ownership with ownership of other mobility means. So in the end, you own nothing but just a card, allowing you to take a bus, a taxi, or a car that can be delivered to your house or not. So you get into virtual ownership. And I don't know if Russia is ready for that. It might, because I think both Moscow and St. Petersburg's traffic situations are becoming so difficult that car ownership is no longer, maybe, I don't know, this would need to be tested, a very important signal for success, right? In China, it's still the case. If you want to demonstrate that you have success in life, you need to own a car. Is this still the case in Russia for the young people? I don't know. This would be an interesting element to verify. But clearly, mobility is all about, I use my time differently when I commute, and I commute in a more clever way. That is, I know when I will arrive, and I make the best use of the asset as well, as opposed to my car. My car is in the garage 95% of its lifetime, or perhaps even 98%. Why do we need that, right? There's a big asset somewhere of absolutely no use to me and to society. So to change this mindset is not easy, even in Western world, by the way, right? So mobility, car sharing is coming up more with the millennials, that is the younger generation that was born 15, 18, 20 years ago. But we see the patterns are changing. Of course, young people have less money in Western countries as well, and that means to buy a car at for $10,000, $20,000 is not an easy thing to do if you don't have a stable work. So I think our economies are forcing as well those consumption pattern to change. Now, just back to your question, I would be very interested and intrigued to work on a very specific mobility project for in Russia. And we could also find a smaller city, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily a large city. One last dimension, I think what's important to add there is that the mobility starts with zero mobility, right? So mobility at point zero, and that's the parking element. And there are needs as well to improve technologies to help the cities find out what is the parking condition for my city. How many park places are available right now and are becoming available because people are now leaving it. This technology doesn't exist fully yet. It's not fully deployed. And so I think that research in the parking domain, in terms of how do you develop softwares to really help manage those park places in a more efficient way, is really going to help improve the performance of mobility solutions for cities in the future.
Good, thank you. Richard, probably what Jean-François was saying generated some new ideas and new remarks from your side. Would you like to add something to what you said?
Yeah, definitely. There is, back to your question, a difference in consumer behavior within Russia as well as consumer behavior, if you want so, in the Western world. And it's an excellent idea of using a smaller Russian city for a pilot case, which might then give additional data for E&Y, for the mobility situation. The other thing is certain Western cities don't even need that mobility anymore. The ones that are extremely developed and have a lot of public transport out there, they don't even think of it as in my personal case. I have 2 cars at home, and 99.9% of the time they are in the garage, and I don't even think about using them or using how I are going to use the public transportation. I just use it. So what that means is certain countries in the Western world don't have that that status need anymore to show off with a vehicle like the Chinese do. So it's really important to make a distinction in which country you do what and what pattern you want to observe. And how is that data relevant for your future research, whether you do a social research or a technical research? And it's definitely great to apply certain Russian cities for that particular research, because nobody knows. Nobody can, I mean, you can go as far with theoretical models as you want. You will not get an answer until you go out and do it. And for that, I would really recommend, yes, try a small city here and also a small city maybe somewhere in Brazil or in Japan, so that you have real data.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. So now time is over. Thank you, Jean-François, for your participation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Yes.
And best regards to everyone.
Still, your colleagues are here.